So welcome everyone, and thanks so much for coming to what I hope is going to be a really wonderful and interesting conversation. We have here on my left Mark Bradford, whose project for the U.S. Pavilion encompasses both the exhibition Tomorrow is Another Day, as well as a 6-year collaboration with Rio Terra de Pensieri, a Venice-based social cooperative that offers employment opportunities to incarcerated people, and Sharon Lockhart over here on my right, whose project for the Polish Pavilion was developed in collaboration with a group of adolescent girls living at Rudchenko, do I have that correct? A home for girls outside of Warsaw. So I'm Gamian Guillot, the Director of Interpretation and Public Engagement at the Baltimore Museum of Art, co-commissioner of the U.S. Pavilion this year, along with the Rose Art Museum at Brandeis University. So today we're going to hear a bit from both of the artists and then get into what I hope will be a really wonderful and rich discussion. We'll have time for a Q&A at the end, so please start thinking of your questions. But before we begin, I want to thank Chiara Barbieri and the folks over at the Peggy Guggenheim Collection, as well as the U.S. Department of State, and of course the Venice Biennale. And a really big and heartfelt thank you goes out to Jill Weinrich, who has been doing everything for us on this project. So thank you to Jill for helping to organize this event, the opening events for the U.S. Pavilion, and all of the work yet to come before we run to the end of this show. So thank you so much, Jill. So I think we'll just go ahead and get started. I think Mark is going to talk to us first about what he's got going on. So take it away, Mark.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's actually, the weather's pretty good. When the pavilion opened, it was like rain, 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 right? So, oh, there's that art and practice book. I don't even know what brev storia means, but okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, I guess this, actually, me and you were kind of talking a little bit about kind of the idea of like, how does Rio Terra, the prison project, and the American Pavilion go together? And I always say they go together because I go together. They go together because I decided they go together. But I really often think that there was a lot of formation that happens in me or in an artist before they become an artist, before they go to art school. There's this whole history. And I think a whole lot of our personal pains and personal triumphs and personal or earliest insecurities probably come from that site in a weird way, even before you get to art school and figure all that stuff out. So with that said, I'll just talk a little bit about kind of the social work that I do and the pavilion itself and how they tie together. You can do that. Oh, you can just keep going. Okay, we're gonna go. Oh, I'll just talk a little bit about kind of the idea of materiality. And for me, when I became an artist, one of the things that I was very interested in is interrogating where the materials come from. The ideas, of course, artists are very varied. But I really wanted to. The first thing you pick up is material, and I was like, wait a minute, I want this material to speak as well. And so for me, because I was interested in social histories, pulling material from the urban environment or from outside of the studio, I felt had a history built in it, the sort of a palimpsest that you couldn't erase. And that's me and Jose doing what we do. And it's usually a performance. We put on these kind of city worker jackets and act really pissed off and underpaid. And people leave us alone as long as it's in the like south side of the city. As soon as it goes west and more affluent, you get busted. So you can just kind of go. Okay, I'm a painter. We can get back to that later. So let's talk a little bit about art and practice, art plus practice. 3 or 4 years ago, I started to think about how I could work with a foundation of contemporary ideas and also addressing need. And what I found, the two things that I rotate around is need and access. Sort of, you can go. So the foundation sits in South Central, which is kind of this romantic narrative of South Central and gangster rap and violence. That's not actually the truth. It's kind of middle and working class people. and but this kind of media hype and music keeps this narrative alive. You just keep going. So keep going, keep going. These are founders. Keep going. I'll talk. Okay, so let's stop here for a minute. I'm going to talk about contemporary art and who has access to contemporary art. So, although the foundation sits in a working class neighborhood, I built a space of contemporary art so that the local community could have access to contemporary ideas. They can debate them. They can not agree. They can say this is not a reflection of the community. I love when black people walk in and say, this isn't black art. And I say, well, he's a black artist, and this is black art. So this idea of pushing away these kind of stereotypes, in a way. And for me, I got exposed to contemporary art later. But what if contemporary art was right on the way to the wig shop, and on the way to church, and on the way? So I just wanted to give people access earlier. That's it. So just move it along. So, also at the same time, although I'm interested in contemporary art, in this area, foster care or foster youth is disproportionately large. At the local high school, it's 50 to 60% who are in care of the system. At the middle school, it's 40 to 45%, which means that most of the young people that you see in the neighborhood possibly could be in care. And there's a park very near, and I would see so many young people hanging out, and I began to talk to them, and they would say, oh, I'm in care. I just got kicked out of care. And so I thought, well, I think we should address this too. And so that's where it came, art and practice. And it was really about listening. And so we partnered with First Place for Youth, which basically does job training, therapy, housing, and again, if someone is in need, then I use all of my resources and access to give them and to partner with other organizations that will help them. So you can see these are some of the kids that we work with. It's usually about 150 a year. It rotates, it's like a 2-year program. They're filling out job applications. So there's a lot of job training that goes in. You assume that everyone knows how to fill out a job application, but a lot of times people don't even know where to begin. So this idea of helping people in need, and the currency that I'm going to get has to be, everybody can agree that the currency is going to be the same. I think if you have all this access, and I think the currency is going to be, we talk like a soul currency. People in need they need tangible things. They need a place to live. They need jobs. They need training. But at the same time, you have to listen. So it's doing a lot of listening. And go forward. This is interesting. I love this slide because this is my mother's hair salon, and we were there for about 10 years, maybe something like 10, a little bit longer. And now this is part of the foundation, and this is the job training lab where they go and they look for jobs on the internet, and there's a job specialist to help them. But I like the fact that this is kind of started in my mom's hair salon. This is a large classroom, by the way. This was actually my studio before it turned into the foundation. So we have lecturers that come in and they speak to job training, job placement. We have a therapist that comes and deals with their personal issues. Let's keep going. These are, I have no idea, people that came to art and practice. Okay, keep going. This is interesting. We developed an app with another artist. He's sitting out there, Sean Shim Boyle. And often people that are in care lose touch with their siblings. And so what we developed is we developed an app and a software that if they download all the places that they've lived, that this app will track. If you notice on the right, you can look, it's called Siblings. It tracks and connects with other people that have had those pathways and the possibility that that could be a sibling. And this is people loading in their information into the beta. and it's specifically for siblings in foster care trying to find each other. They lose touch, and this is something that we developed along with Sean. Let me just keep going. You keep going. And often we'll hire to do our catalogs, to do our silk screening. It comes down to really the basics. They need jobs, they need roots, they need places. And so we really focus on that on the practice side. The Biennale. Okay. So just think of a ruin. I really wanted to make a ruin. I wanted to make something that felt like it was sort of waste. Something that was like a site, something had happened, like the housing collapse, half-built homes, and then something happened in the middle of the night, it just disappeared. So this became like a ruin, a site. I worked outside in front for 2 or 3 months. I mean, working inside the pavilion, and then I just left it. This is the middle passage of it, and it kind of feels like a grotto. And on the left side, it talks about Greek mythology, and on the right side, and the pavilion itself really is about painting. You can keep going. That's a Medusa sculpture that sits in the middle of the left pavilion, left room, not the pavilion, left side of it. Keep going. This is the middle passage. I call it the middle passage. You can play with the idea of middle passage and slavery, or you can talk about the binary between kind of European Greco-Roman art history moving into kind of an American narrative of painting. This is what you are presented with when you walk in. It has to do with collapse, the collapse of a center, and that the person or people are pushed to the edges, that the center is rotten, that it's no longer available. Made from the same material, but I wanted to play with the physicality of the body, you know. This is really me grappling with American painting. This is like me grappling with the history of American painting and what it means to be an African American painter in 2017. And the back painting is called Go Tell It on the Mountain, which James Baldwin was a very he impressed me a lot with his force. And that was someone that I looked at very early. But the idea of mountaintops and who owns mountaintops and who doesn't own mountaintops, and the whole idea of a mountaintop, and people making reference to painting being the mountaintop. So to pollute that, to make it less, to stain it, there's a saying like a fly in the buttermilk, to stain it, to pollute it, to make it less pure. And keep going. These were early end paper paintings, and they had to do with kind of making paintings feel like water. That there was just like silence on the surface, and this Medusian, which is the name of the sculpture, with an externalized rage. So what does one do with rage? Do we internalize it or externalize it? And that's the kind of the questions that I asked. If something is still on the outside, there's a possibility that beneath that surface there could be infinite possibilities. Let's leave it at that. And so Rio Terra is the other part, and that came from me wandering around Venice and discovering that there was a women's prison and really being fascinated by that, because that's something that I think people like to cover up. And society loves to cover up mistakes. We don't embrace mistakes as we embrace success. We embrace redemption. Oh, I've gone through the 12-step program and I'm redeemed. And then we can talk about it. But just mistakes are not on the same level. And so I really thought, oh, this would be an interesting project to work with because they were passionate. It was already in place. Let me go through the slides. So they make bags, they make products. And when I started talking to them, I asked them what they needed. And they were very clear. We wanted a physical presence in Venice so that people would understand who we were. And so that's where the product came from, to give them a physical presence in Venice, that they could sell their products, they could stand on their own, and they could tell their own stories. And it's been amazing. Some of the people in the program now work with me. There's actually one here today. So it went from working inside of the prison to outside the prison to working in, and this is what I believe in, the possibility that where something begins does not necessarily mean where it has to end up. And this is a 6-year collaboration, and this is what they'll tell me first year. The second year we'll have, right, it'll morph. And I wanted to talk with Sharon today because I feel like she's like my sister in all of this, you know? When you have these kind of crazy ideas outside of the, like, kind of the norm, and you hear someone else doing it, you feel like a kinship, like, yeah, you know, I get that. On an emotional level, I get that. And so when I heard, you know, you can also do the pavilion, it just felt like really right. And it's funny though, in our personal life, we don't see each other that much, which is kind of interesting. But every time we see each other, we're always like in the corner talking super intensely. So.
I know. I remember asking. Oh, sorry, Mark. No, I was just going to say, like a few years ago, I think I was working at a university at USC, and I was a tenured professor for 15 years, and I sat next to you at a dinner, and you were telling me about art and practice, and I was like, oh my God, will you hire me? I was like, that's everything I believe in, you know. So, and I was just making my work and stuff, but that was a really important time for me because I just saw something that was happening in education that I didn't believe in, and where the university was situated and how it didn't participate with that geography. So yeah, meeting you is kind of like one of the reasons I quit, I think. Yeah. So thank you.